Hello, everybody, and Advent blessings to you. Can you tell where I'm standing? I had a parishioner tell me recently that he really liked watching these videos, I think primarily because he got to guess where I would be standing before each video came out. Well, I'm standing in front of what's called the Annunciation window here at Nativity. Right behind me depicts the scene in which the angel Gabriel announces to Mary that she will be the mother of the Christ child. That story is the gospel lesson for the fourth Sunday in Advent, and so I'll probably talk about it next week. But today I want to talk about the story that is the gospel lesson appointed for this very day, Tuesday, December 12th. It comes from Matthew chapter 22, and it's that scene in which a Pharisee, who's also a lawyer, we're told, asked Jesus the question, "What is the greatest commandment?" Jesus replies, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment." And then he adds, "And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets." I recall reading a reflection on that very passage in the past year or two. This was written by one of my favorite Episcopal priests. His name is Peter van der Veen. And Peter was talking about these two commandments. And he posed the question, how do we love God? And then Peter went on to say that it seems that most people in response will in one way or another say, we love God by loving our neighbor. And so these two commandments become kind of one and the same. Peter goes on to say, and he's right about this, that service is certainly a part of love. But if we say that loving God is loving our neighbor, then we're really missing out on something important, something that is foundational. Let me read to you what Peter says we miss out on if we think of loving God as simply the act of loving our neighbor. He says, what is missing is the heart of love, devotion, adoration, and the kind of passion that forgets time and all the obligations that time sets out, just for the opportunity to be present. Love lingers. It lingers without purpose, because love causes us to be enthralled. Peter's point here, I think, is a good one. Now, let me pause and say that Jesus was a really smart guy. And I want you to remember, you heard it here first. And so Jesus doesn't say things by accident, if you will. And notice that he says the first commandment, the greatest commandment, is to love God. And the second commandment is to love neighbor, not the other way around. I think what Peter is getting at in his analysis, and I think he's spot on, is this: that if we focus on loving our neighbor as a means or as the way of loving God, then we don't really experience God. That loving God comes first. And it is out of loving God that we naturally flow into loving our neighbor. Well, then how is it we learn to love God in the way that Peter mentions? Becoming enthralled with God, wanting to be in God's presence, just to be in God's presence, to linger with God. Well, I think the beginning is just spend some time with God. That's how we fall in love with each other. We spend time with each other. Just spending time in the presence of God, opening ourselves up to God being with us. That's how we learn to love God. That's how we learn to be enthralled with God's presence. I hope you have a great week. I look forward to seeing you this Sunday.